All right, we're having a hangout today, Bald Chatham Schools, our first of hopefully many hangouts. Today's hangout, I'm joined by Miss Elizabeth Gregrich, principal at Glenwood Intermediate School, and today we're going to talk a little bit about leadership and some programs that she started in her building and a book study that she started. Again, my name is Josh Mulvaney, Director of Technology. Elizabeth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. I'm Elizabeth Gregory at Glenwood Intermediate School.
All right, let's dive right in. Elizabeth, in 2017 school year, you started a program at GIS basically stated or called We Lead. Tell us a little bit about the program and its purpose.
I'd love to. Our instructional leadership team sat down to try and set goals for the school year for our students. In looking at our math and reading scores, universal scores definitely had some gaps for some of our students, but overall, our reading and math achievement levels did not shout out to us that we needed a very heavy push in one area or another. But what we did see is some students that didn't look as though that they were achieving on their universal assessments and proving to us and to themselves what they truly knew. In saying that, the group sat down and said, what can we do for our students to make sure that they are the types of learners that that we need, that they need for their futures, but also so that they can see everything that they can achieve. Out of that was the birth of a leadership, actually not program, but more of an initiative, a culture change, we might say, in order for our students to truly see what their strengths are. We decided that them understanding that they were all leaders in their own right, in their own strengths, was the way for them to understand exactly what they could do and how to get and to reach their fullest potential.
That's excellent, and that's great. And it sounds like you hit it too, was as far as letting everybody know they can be a leader. Oftentimes I know that people hear the word leader and often think of it as a position and only leading other people, but it sounds like you were letting the students know that everybody can be a leader, and even in just leading choices in their lives. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
You're hearing the exact right thing. In fact, we have had much feedback from outside individuals that have not been a part of the culture change in our building state. Well, my child is not going to be a leader. They are not going to be the president. I think my child will be a follower, but they need to know who to follow. And our answer to that is every student is a leader in their choices. They will lead themselves, whether that means to follow the right person or what direction, what path they need to take. Every student needs to lead their own behaviors and their own future. That's where our actual process of culture change began, is with lessons in the classrooms for every single student to understand truly what a leader is and what their leadership qualities were. And we spent probably the whole first 4 months just depicting to students what a true leader is and how they too are leaders.
Great. And it sounds like in culture change, but oftentimes the word change is scary, and you got to have buy-in. How was the buy-in from your staff and students with the initiative?
Great question. You are correct. The word change sometimes is scary. Some people think, oh my gosh, this is another change. But actually what this is just a shift, or maybe I'll even say a refocus. Because this is not a change in our curriculum per se. It actually is just shifting our focus so that the students can understand what their full potential really is. It's basically shouting out loud enough to the students their strengths so that they hear it and they believe it. As far as buy-in goes, I would say this occurred simultaneously with students and staff members. And so I would say it moved right about at the same pace for students and staff. Our instructional leadership team, of course, was the first because they developed this culture shift idea, and they spread the word very slowly to the staff by just giving them small snippets of what we know this can do for our students. And that started with our staff members seeing some of the changes in our students just when we showed to our students that we believed in them. A lot of times we know seeing is believing. And as the teachers sat in on some of these lessons that we offered our students, yes, they became more embedded in this culture shift, but they also saw our students doing things that they had not seen before. Obvious things such as opening doors for one another, making eye contact when they're speaking to one another, using their one another's names when they're speaking to each other, just simple things like saying please and thank you, and making eye contact as they walked down the hallway. As soon as people started seeing some of these shifts actually have positive effects, we started getting more buy-in, and more buy-in.
That's great. And, you know, unfortunately, oftentimes whenever somebody hears the word staff, when it comes to schools, the only thing they think about is teachers in all reality. But I know, you know, it's a bigger picture in that staff in a school's everything from the principals, the teachers, the custodians, the bus drivers. Do you feel like the entire staff bought in and helped with that success?
Another great question. And that's something that we're going to have to work on this in the 17-18 school years, making sure that we invest the time so that all of our staff, not just teachers, hear the message that we are offering the students. Because one of the success points that we will have to note next year is a common language. In order for this to truly be a shift, for us all to impact our students, they're going to need to hear that consistent language throughout the building. Although you will see at some point every staff member, excluding, I would say, the bus drivers, every staff member at one point will be wearing a GIS We Lead shirt, but that's not enough. We need to make sure that we are synergizing is the word actually that the leader in me uses, that everyone is working together using common language and, most important, modeling the behaviors that we want our students to absorb. So next year, our focus will be staff. It will be staff training. It will be staff understanding the language, staff understanding that their model is number one.
That's great. And I agree 100% with that, because oftentimes it could be even those short interactions that a student has with a cafeteria line worker, a custodian, and it's all about building relationships. And it might just be that little bit. And it starts with when a student gets on the bus at the start of the day. It could be the mood of a bus driver, and, you know, they start their day with a bus driver and they end their day with the bus driver. So I agree 100% that it's got to be across the board. So that's great.
And because we bus drivers this year, we did make sure that we greeted the students at the bus doors and at the front of the building to make sure that the first voice, the first GIS staff member that they saw, they were modeling. And then as they left to go get on the buses, the same happened with great eye contact, maybe even a firm handshake or a high five, and making, again, as you said, making sure that those connections were the second they walked through the front door and as they walked out the front or back door.
Perfect. With me being a district wide, I get to see all the buildings, but I definitely seen, and when I attended your building, a change in the atmosphere, and it just seemed different. I could tell, like you said, the kids were able to converse more like an adult, carry on a conversation. You know, I seen the eye contact, but even from an outsider, I'd like to get your input on what are some noticeable outcomes on the program. What else did you see in your building?
Well, I saw some problem-solving skills that I had not seen, or we had not seen before. When a student would seek out some support, and sometimes prior to this, a student would need to be referred. You need to go and see Mrs. Rashi or Mr. Surges, Mrs. Gregrich, talk with your teacher. We saw students approaching adults, Mrs. Smith out on the playground, who was very invested in this culture shift. Students seeking her out and saying, I have a situation out on the playground and I need you to help me problem solve that. Or them coming into the office and saying, I was not a leader outside. I did not handle this correctly. Can you help me problem solve this? So Mr. Surges and I saw a lot of change in the fact of students being a little bit reactive, but proactive in trying to problem solve before they ran into the same situation again. I noticed that. We also noticed this was a huge notification from all staff members. We are seeing students help one another. Something as simple as a student drops all of their books. Students are very self-involved, specifically at this age. And that's very age appropriate. Starting from infancy all the way through adulthood, our focus is to become the people we're supposed to be. So you are self-involved. And our students in the past could have walked right past a student and thought, oh, I'm sorry you dropped that, or maybe didn't even notice it. But now we are noticing students taking the time, stopping, and helping other students pick things up. We had multiple new students move into the district after this initiative really kicked off. And I would walk out into the commons at the beginning of the school day and say, I've got a student here that really needs your support. They're new and they're nervous. I had 5 to 6 boys or girls at the least. In fact, I had to cut it at that, who would walk in, introduce themselves, shake their hand, and say, I will help you. In fact, to the point where we had to teach them, all right, give them a little bit of independence. We wanted to help them go from class to class, help them with their locker combination, help them get to know the building. We saw a huge shift in students helping students. So we saw some very positive impacts here.
That's great. And it sounds like, and even from, like I said, an outsider looking in, the We Lead initiative was a great success. And like anything, though, you're going to have to, you need to build on it and improve on it. And I know that you did a book study, or doing a book study currently this summer with some of your volunteer staff that chose to participate on the book, The Leader in Me by Stephen Covey. How do you feel like this book tied into your We Lead, and why did you choose this book?
Well, interesting. I think this book chose me and chose us because it was my knowledge of the 7 habits, as well as my discussion with a couple of teachers in the 7 habits. Then a teacher brought this book to me and said, this is an explanation of exactly how we feel about what our students need to, and we talk so much about the 21st century learning skills and education and where we need to send our students after they leave high school. This book is truly a definite culture change, and it explains how another building took a very negative situation, a school that was getting ready to be closed, and took the 7 habits of highly effective people, taught them to students so that those students could actually lead themselves. From me reading this book, and from what the instructional leadership team mentioned, that our students need to lead themselves, it was almost like a natural marriage there of, I really think that this could help guide us in making sure that we are consistent with our language, but also that we have some sustainability. We started off with the instructional leadership team being the biggest voices of this leadership initiative. But this book will help all of our staff members really understand where we're headed. Everybody needs to understand the purpose, and this book really does that. It takes a school from a very rough time and then implementing the seven habits to the students, them leading themselves, and eventually, which is the picture perfect world, the students actually leading the school.
That's great. And I appreciate it. And I asked you, I wanted to be a part of it because I knew that this was going to be something big and something that everybody would want to be a part of. So I'm actually partaking in your book study with you and your staff. And I just want to share, we're going to pull up, I'm going to share my spreadsheet with you now that you created.
Sure.
And let's just take a look. So basically what you've got here is a spreadsheet that you created to allow your staff to kind of share thoughts, quotes, and things on the book. So I just want to take some time, maybe highlight a few things, and we'll just highlight chapters 1 and 2 and things that we've taken away, and maybe highlight some of their quotes that they put on the sheet. The very first thing, I knew that we were going on the right thing, and you picked the right book on. Even before the book started, there's a nice little quote in here. Every now and then, life invites us to pause and seek higher vantage point, a place where we can scan the horizon and reevaluate our courses and destination. May this book provide such a moment for you. And I feel like that's really where we're at. Is we're at a time in education where we need to kind of step back, look at things that maybe we need to change. Education, I feel like, isn't any different than any other field that has changed over the years, and it's not something that we need to do extra. It's maybe just something that we need to do better and reevaluate how we do it.
Well, you're right. And here we go back to that word change again. But our world is constantly changing. And whether somebody anticipates whether that's for the better or for the worse, it is changing. And students are not different than they were back in the 1900s. Everyone is hungry to learn, and all students are passionate for what they're passionate about. But what we need to educate our students to do is to exist in the world after they leave Ball Chatham or whatever district they're in. And our world is changing, and we have to educate our students to be successful in whatever their endeavors. And this book also, and many people have noted this, is that education of time ago was all about packing in the knowledge and being able to regurgitate some of that knowledge, and that's not where we are anymore, because we can gain knowledge at our fingertips instantaneously via Google. If you need to know something, being able to use your resources is important. So creating knowledge workers is not so much where we are anymore, but instead problem solvers, students with interpersonal skills, but really being able to problem solve by knowing what resources are out there. So I love the quote that you picked out too, Josh, because this book definitely takes you through a reflection process of what our teaching styles are, but also our communication styles are, because these 7 habits are not just for our students, but us revisiting those 7 habits is essential as well.
I agree. And I know one of the things that there's several good things on here that your staff had pointed out and that I took away from it. But I really like this concept because, anytime that anybody asks to maybe do something different, do a little bit extra, or it often gets times as, oh, great, that's one more thing I have to do. And in the book, it makes it clear that it's not one more thing that we have to do as educators, but a better way of thinking and doing what we're already doing. We're not going to do anything extra. It's just changing the way we do it.
Absolutely. We're not asking them to change their curriculum, and we're not asking them even to change their strategies. It's just in possibly how they say it, or more importantly, how they present it a little bit more open-ended, teaching our students how to seek out their own answers, and not just an answer, a black or white answer, but posing questions to them that are so open-ended that a student has to be proactive and find some of their own answers. So you're exactly right. And I noted that, obviously it's highlighted for me in the book, but every teacher is going to say, is this one more thing? And I get that. You and I both understand one more thing. We don't have space on our plate. What are we going to shove off the plate? But this is actually just how you put it on the plate. So you have your plate, and it's really how you arrange it or how you present it, how you place it on there for our students. Not one more thing. It's just how it's presented.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, that's kind of what I wanted to share. Do you got any quotes or anything that you wanted to share before we sign off, or are you good with it?
Well, I'm sure that there are several that I would like to share, but some of the testimonials in here are pretty amazing in this book. So if anybody has the opportunity to pick this book up, and the first 2 chapters that the staff has really started collaborating on are kind of is this too good to be true? And that's pretty impacting, because it does look as though this could be too good to be true, where the students are truly running the building, and it's not. Many of our teachers have gone to what we call symposiums, and they have visited schools that have taken on a leadership model in one way, shape, or form, whatever worked for that building, and it does work. So the one thing that I try to say to every student every day is that everybody is a genius. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's a genius in math, or everybody's a genius in speaking to large crowds, but everybody has a genius. And if we can make sure that all of our students know what their genius is, they'll know what they need to do and what they need to be when they leave Ball Chatham.
That's excellent. That's an excellent way to end this too, Elizabeth. It was a great time. I look forward to the rest of the book study. Hopefully we can do another one of these on the later chapters, and I look forward to seeing which way We Lead goes, and in all reality, how big it grows into, because I think Media School have really hit on something big, and that something could change the entire culture of the district. So great job to you and your staff.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it for joining our book study.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, and we'll sign off.
Sounds great. Thanks, Josh. Bye-bye.